It's Denise Eckert, and I love coming on here and sharing different ideas and techniques to make your life happier. And today I've got Tami Stackelhouse, and she's an award-winning author, founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute, host of the Fibromyalgia podcast, and executive producer of the featured documentary Invisible. Tami teaches fibromyalgia patients how to take back control of their lives and health using her signature fibromyalgia wellness framework so they can break free from the prison their bodies have become and begin living their lives that they love. Welcome, Tami.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I've never said fibromyalgia so many times in one paragraph.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I joke when I introduce myself. I say all the things, and then I'm like, you might be able to guess
Yeah.
maybe what I do.
Okay, for the audience today, we're going to be talking about fibromyalgia. Now, tell me what
Yes.
inspired you to do this type of work, to go down the road of fibromyalgia? I can't even say it anymore.
Yeah. Yes. So I was diagnosed myself back in 2007, I think it was. So for the first couple of years, like most of us, spent my time just trying to find ways to feel better. Not really succeeding, but fortunately not getting worse either. I found that spot where I was just treading water, but that wasn't good enough. And I don't know, about 6 months, a year after my diagnosis, my doctor introduced me to a health coach. And that is when things finally started to shift for me. And after the help that I had from her, feeling like I was getting my life back, I wanted to pay that forward and I wanted to help other people. So that's when I became a coach. And just the things that I knew the most about were, of course, my own illnesses, fibromyalgia being right up at the top. And so from pretty much day one as a health coach, I focused on helping people with fibromyalgia.
Now I find fibromyalgia is so under-researched, number one,
Yeah.
misdiagnosed, number two,
Yep.
and put into different boxes. Now, can you explain exactly what it is?
Yes, I would be happy to. So, fibromyalgia is a chronic pain condition. There's a lot we don't know, but I will share what we do know. There are four primary symptoms. We have widespread body pain, and that pain will move around. So it's not like arthritis where you've got one spot that hurts. Your legs might hurt one day, your neck hurts the next day, then your back. Like it moves around, and everything looks normal on x rays, MRIs, things like that. So, widespread body pain, we have fatigue, and it's not like just being tired. I think we're both old enough to remember those old cell phones we'd plug in all night long and they might last for 45 minutes. That's what a fibro body is like. We don't make energy the same way. We found some mitochondrial dysfunction, things wrong with the parts of our cells that actually make energy. So we have this fatigue. We also have unrefreshing sleep. So you could sleep for hours and wake up feeling like you never slept at all. And all of these things go together. We also end up with cognitive dysfunction or brain fog, some of those caused by the other symptoms, but it's also a symptom in and of itself, just not being able to think clearly and remember things and all the stuff.
Now, is there actual testing that works? Because I know a couple of my friends have tried to go in for testing and everything was just, I don't know, it was more confusing once they got the testing and the doctor's appointment than it was before.
Yes, that can often be the case. So, for a long time, fibromyalgia was a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning you had to rule everything else out, that your pain couldn't be from something else, your fatigue couldn't be caused from something else. So, depending on when they went through all of this, it may have been part of that where they are having to test and exclude all of these things. And at the end, if we don't find an answer stamp, then you have fibromyalgia. These days, it's a little less like that because we are learning that you can have overlapping conditions. So, someone could have rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia. They could have lupus and fibromyalgia. So we can see this happening where there's an overlap. So it's less of a diagnosis of exclusion. Having said all that, though, there is no rule it in tests. We only have rule it out tests. So we can test to make sure it's not lupus, but we can't test to see, is it fibromyalgia? There is no like standard accepted blood test. There have been some that have come and gone, but nothing that the medical system has like accepted as this is the gold standard to know. To be diagnosed with fibromyalgia, we look at your history. We look at your pain levels, your fatigue levels. We check certain parts of your body. There are certain areas with fibromyalgia that are called tender points. There's 9 pairs of them, and those 18 spots tend to hurt more with somebody with fibromyalgia than they would somebody who doesn't have fibromyalgia. And there's a few here on your neck and your back and the inside of your elbow and the inside of your knee and a few places like that. Just on a normal person shouldn't hurt very much, but with fibromyalgia it can be very painful.
Now, in your expert opinion, what is causing the pain? Is it muscles? Is it nerves? Is it tendons?
Great question. And this is one of those things that we don't have a like conclusive answer for. We're still trying to figure out a lot of things. But just the Tami take on all of this, there's something that happens to our central nervous system, our brain, our spinal cord, our nerves, right? Where we start to interpret everything as pain. So you might have someone pat you on the back and it's painful, right? Or you are laying in bed and your hip feels like it's black and blue and you're laying on the bruise. Like it starts to interpret everything as pain. They've also found that there are 10 additional areas of the brain that light up with people with fibromyalgia when we experience pain. It's twofold. There's the one aspect that is everything hurts when things shouldn't hurt, but there's also this aspect of it's using more of our brains to process that pain. There is definitely something going wrong in the central nervous system on how we interpret all of that. One of my friends who is a fibro researcher, she actually believes that the pain is coming from our fascia. Apparently, there aren't as many nerve endings in muscles as there are in fascia. And so when we feel that muscle pain, it's probably more coming from the fascia than the muscle itself. And so that's where she thinks the pain is coming from. For me, I like to think of fibromyalgia as an amplifier. It takes whatever pain you have, big pain or little pain, and it just turns up the volume. It's that central nervous system issue where we take everything and we crank it up.
Wow. Now, how does stress come into this factor? I know stress is so bad for us, but what have you seen with your clients who are stressed out? And you know what? When you're not feeling well and you're in pain all the time and you're not able to work, you've got all these stresses because it affects your relationships, it affects your financial status, it affects your energy levels and everything else. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, yes. So I think it's helpful to divide this in half because there is the stress that leads to fibromyalgia, and then there's also the stress caused by fibromyalgia. So if we think about the stress that leads maybe to somebody developing fibromyalgia, I'll just use myself as an example. I worked at a very stressful job for 9 years. I ran the support department for a software company. So I managed the call center. I managed the people who were answering all the email support questions, right? Anytime the phone rang, it was because somebody had a problem. So it was a very stressful job. And it was towards the end of that where I developed fibromyalgia, and I'm sure that stress was part of it. It's a lot like the conversation that you had on your podcast recently about burnout, right? We all go through stress, but if you have that stress for long enough, there's this switch that sort of gets flipped in your body where now things have changed. It's that rubber band that breaks. So when we're thinking about fibromyalgia and the symptoms coming out of our stress, it's basically because our body ends up in fight or flight and can't get out of it. This is something that we do see in fibromyalgia, is that we have this tendency to get stuck in fight or flight. So somebody with fibromyalgia, you might get cut off on the freeway, but then your body is reacting to that all day. Your heart rate might be elevated all day. Your muscles might be tense all day. We don't just let it go. It's hard for us to get back out of fight or flight. So that's the leading to fibro symptoms. And so from this perspective, any kind of stress can make symptoms worse because it's, again, turning up the volume. Then fibromyalgia actually causes a lot of stress too. There's a lot of medical trauma, trying to just get a diagnosis, right? Doctors who don't believe us, everything looks normal, you must be making it up, you're just drug seekers. Like, all of these things come our way. And then friends and family and coworkers not understanding either because we look totally fine. And the day that we show up for the party, we probably do feel fairly decent. Otherwise, we wouldn't be there. So yeah, fibromyalgia itself can then cause all of these stressors, and it just ends up being this horrible cycle of stress causing more symptoms, those symptoms making your fibromyalgia more severe, which then causes more stress, which causes more symptoms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That nasty hamster wheel, isn't it? Now, is fibromyalgia something that you can eliminate, or is it something that you just need to learn to live with?
It depends on how you're asking that question. So I will tell you that my doctor considers my fibromyalgia to be in remission. I have not had any fibro pain since 2018. So that was
Yay.
8 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Yep. So you can get to that point. Do I consider myself like cured or healed? I don't. It's still in there somewhere. I know if I go back to not getting enough sleep, not eating well, ignoring my body's clues, like if I go back to all those old bad habits, or maybe I get in a really bad car accident or something super stressful happens in my life, I know it's still there and it can still come back. So I am always living with fibromyalgia. It's not necessarily the one in charge anymore, but I do still consider myself to be a person living in a fibro body, and I want to keep that body happy if I want to stay pain-free. So I think you can get to that point, but it does depend on a lot of factors. I think we can remove fibromyalgia from the equation, but if somebody has developed fibromyalgia secondary to maybe they were in a bad car accident and they've got neck issues, back issues, degenerative disc disease, whatever, there's a limit to how pain-free you're ever going to be, and that has nothing to do with fibromyalgia. Right? We can take fibro out of the equation, but you still have the physical issues that you're still going to be dealing with. So, yes, I think we can get to a point where we can have fibromyalgia so managed that it doesn't impact our lives. It's totally possible.
Yeah. And my sister was misdiagnosed with fibro and it ended up being Lyme, but it was
Mm,
6 years of being and her body deteriorating before a proper diagnosis has finally been done. And she's finally doing well. And she's like super, super active. And then all of a sudden, not. And it was
mm,
like, and I love what you said too, that the people around you don't understand. One minute she's out playing who knows what. I mean, she'd play ball hockey in the winter and soccer and this and that I would never even attempt to being in pain in bed and can't get out and
yes.
not having a formal diagnosis for anything. And it's so hard. It really is. Now, does this affect more women or men?
So again, I'm going to give you like the official answer and then the Tami answer.
I love
So,
it.
so officially, we do see more diagnoses happening in women. The last numbers that I saw were that it affects 7.7% of women and 4 point something percent of men. And so the number, like all told, ends up being 6.4% of the population, but definitely more women. Now, we also have to consider how many guys do you know won't go to the doctor until they're like dying? Like my husband mentioned the other day, oh, I can barely lift my arm. I'm like, dude, I would have taken care of that. Somebody would have seen that way before you get to the point where you can't lift your arm. So I think it's probably more equal. It's just that men don't go to the doctor, and fibromyalgia is seen as a women's illness, right? So when guys go to the doctor and they're in pain, fibromyalgia is not the thing that their doctor is thinking of first. Take all that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, exactly. Now, for someone that's listening and they know someone or themselves have figured out that, yeah, it is fibro, what are the steps that they can take to make a difference in their lives?
Absolutely. So once you have your diagnosis, like you've just taking care of the biggest battle right there. If you are thinking you're dealing with fibromyalgia and you don't have a diagnosis yet, what I'm about to share will still be helpful because I think there's a lot that we can do even without a diagnosis. But that diagnosis can be important for insurance approving certain treatments and all those kinds of things. So the thing that is both the hardest to work on and also the most important is our sleep. People with fibromyalgia have a much, much higher incidence of sleep related issues. For instance, sleep apnea. In the normal population, it's way less than 10%, way less. And with fibromyalgia patients, it's almost 50%. It's actually 45% of people with fibromyalgia have sleep apnea. So if you could imagine grabbing a quarter and flipping it, heads or tails, that's your chances. So anybody who has been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, who thinks they might have fibromyalgia, you need to be talking to your doctor about having a sleep study. It might be something you have to do at home first, just checking to see if you have sleep apnea. But ideally, you want the lab study where you go sleep somewhere else because they can actually check for so many more things. They can check for periodic limb movement disorder. They can check for various kinds of sleep apnea. Is it central sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea? They can check alpha, delta, brain waves, all kinds of other things. So if you can, get it done in a lab, but everybody should be doing that because if you don't get good sleep, like I think we already all know that's critical for good health, right? So that would be number one, getting a sleep study and beginning to work on your sleep. I think it's also important as patients that we educate ourselves. This particular illness is one that our doctors just don't know much about. Here in the US, I know you're in Canada, but here in the US, they did a study recently and they found that it's only about modules, 9 class hours of pain management education in medical school. That is all pain management. That is not just fibromyalgia. That is not even just chronic pain. That is all pain. Canada's a little bit better. It's about twice that, but it's still only 18 hours. So your doctors aren't going to know. And I think we just have to accept this as fact and then educate ourselves as much as possible as patients. So that means reading books, listening to podcasts, following people that you trust on social media that have good information, and really becoming educated as patients because you are going to need to be the one who goes to your doctor and says, hey, I read about this thing. Can we test for this? Can I try this supplement? What about this new medication that just came out? You are probably going to have to be a lot more involved in your care than you might be for a lot of other things.
Myself right now, we have a big shortage of doctors around here. So we have more of the nurse practitioners, and I just love mine because you go in with your questions, you sit. They are not being paid by the procedure, and you're not in and out of the door as quick as possible. And yeah, it's really nice to be able to work with someone and create a plan or do research into something if it's your own health. Because we're
Absolutely.
the only ones that know our own body.
Exactly, exactly. Nobody knows what it's like in there but you.
Yeah.
Nobody
And
else lives there. That's right. That's right. And I think it's also, we have to educate ourselves as patients, and we also have to accept the fact that our doctors may not be the expert in this thing. And so, a lot of times, working as a coach, I'm the fibro expert on the team, and I'm teaching both you and your doctor and sharing information for both of you, right? I can't prescribe, I can't diagnose, I'm not a doctor, but I can absolutely bring the fibro expertise and also just my experience of living with it for almost 20 years now to be able to say, hey, have you tried this? Hey, what about this thing? What about that thing? So I think as patients, we're used to going to the doctor's office and they're the expert and we just listen to them. This is a whole different thing with fibromyalgia. You need to have somebody who knows fibro on your team, but it might not be your doctor. It might
Mhm.
need to be someone like a coach or even just yourself being educated to be able to fill that gap because that knowledge gap is definitely going to be there.
Now, as an expert, do you find that there is sufficient research being done on this?
No.
Yeah.
So I've got more statistics for you. And it just highlights exactly what you're getting at here. So they had discovered that fibromyalgia is tied with the tied in last place for the number of articles published in rheumatological journals. So we are absolutely last with scleroderma, I think it is. But fibromyalgia affects so many more people. They found that rheumatoid arthritis had 17 times as many any studies published. That's what I'm trying to say. They had about 17 times as many studies published in the journals as fibromyalgia. But if you look at the number of people each condition affects, fibromyalgia affects 17 times as many people as rheumatoid arthritis. It is literally backwards.
Yeah. It's crazy, eh?
Yeah.
So I understand you have a quiz available. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, my
Everybody loves a
fibromyalgia wellness
quiz.
stuff. I know. I always take all those free quizzes myself, which is partly why I made one because I think they're so fun. So, the fibromyalgia wellness style quiz is really a personality test. And we are looking at some key personality traits that research has shown to predict health outcomes. And we look at those traits in the context of your fibromyalgia and how you manage your fibromyalgia. So I'll give you an example. I'm a playmaker. You are never going to find me not getting in bed or pushing too hard because I'm doing chores. I will be, however, watching TV too late, reading my book too late, playing games too late, right? I am a playmaker. I do what's fun and what's interesting, and the everyday common stuff is hard for me. So I need help to do the basic things like brush your teeth every night. It's so boring, right? So that's me as a playmaker. The exact opposite of me would be somebody who's a perfectionist. They are the ones who are going to be going through their mental to do list. Have I done everything? Have I done it well enough? Have I checked off all the boxes? They are not sleeping because they're either staying up late getting all the things done or they're running through that to do list in their heads. So, depending on your personality, there's also the ponderer, the prevailer. There are certain strengths that you have, right? So, as a playmaker, it's a lot easier for me not to stress about stuff. That's just not in my DNA to stress that much. But I also struggle to do some of the basic things that have to be done, right? Everybody has their own strengths, their own weaknesses. This little quiz will tell you who you are. And then if you sign up for the extra tips, I send, I think it's about 5 or 6 emails that will come later that will tell you how your personality, you can use that strength to better manage your fibromyalgia, what the pitfalls are that you need to avoid that will naturally come your way, and just really work with your personality instead of fighting against it to better manage your health. So it is super fun. Short quiz. You can find it at fibroquiz.com. Super easy to find. And I think it will be super helpful for anybody with fibromyalgia.
I love that. That's so cute. Now, Tammy, we're going to be wrapping this up. What are your final words of wisdom for the audience today?
Goodness. So, the two things that I want people to take away from this are number one, fibromyalgia is real, right? So if you've had people not believing you, if you've even doubted yourself, maybe I'm just overreacting. You're not. This is real, okay? The second thing is I want you to know that feeling better is possible. It doesn't matter how good or how bad you feel. You can still find ways to feel better. You just might need some new ideas, right? You might need somebody new on your team that can bring a fresh perspective. You might need to learn more yourself. But feeling better is absolutely possible. And so if you're hearing from your medical team, get used to it. You just need to learn how to live with it. There's not much we can do for you. That is not true. They just don't know.
Yeah,
But there is a lot that can be done.
that's great. Thank you so much today. Such amazing information. And wherever you're watching or listening to this, I will be putting Tammy's information. So please, if you have any questions, reach out and ask Tammy questions. And yeah, amazing information. It's
Yep,
great when we can take control of how we feel. And that's
absolutely.
so important. Well, leaving you a gentle reminder to slow down and enjoy life. And I'll see you in the next episode.